is butchered. I'm a perfectionist. Hey, everybody. So I looked at the presentation I sent to Key and I was like, this is disgusting. It needs to be revamped. So that's something I'm going to use my presentation time to show you layers of professionalism and what it should look like. Because if you see something that looks like this and it's not to your liking, you should edit it. You should make it so it's your best foot forward. But once he gets everything started. So I'm Nekisha. I've been at Big Brothers Big Sisters now for the last 2 years, going on 3. So I work directly in the school system within Philadelphia. I'm at 5 different public schools right now. Well, 4 public, 1 charter school. So I'm going to use this presentation just to kind of be like a little reminder for me, different points I want to touch on. But as women in the workplace, I think that we have the potential to be change makers in the community at a greater large. So that's something that I have instilled in myself, and I've gotten that from family, whether it's from mentors in my community, in my direct line of communication, or seeing people on social media, seeing people in the news that I look at, or the readings that I have. So for me, some of the questions that I ask myself were, who am I and what are my core values? And I think some of the ladies were talking about that earlier. Knowing who you are and how to harness that superpower, because I think that everybody in the room, we have something that we're so good at. We don't necessarily know what it is just yet. So that's something that I worked on. Since I was growing up, I needed to ask myself these questions because they were coming up regardless. I think respect, integrity, and responsiveness is something that I hold true to my heart. I want to make sure that everybody that I encounter feels better after they left me, not worse. So studying mental health and mental wellness, I understand the impacts that I can have, whether I'm talking to you directly, or if you know my name through somebody else, or if you see me on the street. We are always a representation of who we are, you know, where we're coming from. So I try to be mindful of that. So being your authentic self, being the most genuine, that's something that I fight and strive to do. As a Black person in the workplace, we're quieted, we're hushed, we're put in the corner. So as a young woman, I wanted to figure out, well, how can I get my voice out there? Who's going to be willing to hear me, and who's going to be an ally in that journey? So finding my voice was such a struggle, and so I used writing to do that, and I used music. So writing poetry, writing short stories, writing nonfiction stories, writing stories that directly talked about my life, my trauma, and the things that I lived through. And that was a way to figure out, how do I deal with these things? Do I go to therapy? I had to study therapy in order to even figure out what to do. So I think that you really got to figure out what your next step is, and that's going to look different for each person. So for me now, personally, exploring my culture and my history has been so enriching and so empowering. Coming from the Caribbean and having such a different worldview, essentially, from what people do here in America versus being in the South, being on the East Coast. So know your history, know where your people are coming from, and embrace it. Don't be ashamed of that, what makes you who you are. So I think growing up, being a queer person in a Black community is not necessarily a safe thing, especially in the Caribbean. So knowing that, you kind of step backwards. You take a step back, you observe, you pay attention. But now I'm like, I don't give a, I'm grown, I can do what I want. So I've built that. I've built that courage. So I think it's important for us to explore those sides of ourselves and be honest and be transparent. So another question that I ask myself, well, what are my needs? Now that I know who I am and what my core values are, what do I need and what do I want? And those things are very, very different. So you have to ask yourself what those things are. And I think asking myself that question helped to encourage self-advocacy, especially in the workplace, when you need to stick up for yourself, when you need to challenge somebody, and you need to show them, look, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. If that doesn't align with me, then we can talk about it, we can work on that. But if you're not about that life, then you can stay on the back burner and somebody else will be granted another opportunity. So I think knowing how to speak up for yourself and speak up for others is so important. So letting fear fuel you versus guide you. I am a fearful person, okay? I worry about everything. Every time I go outside, I'm like, who's out there? Do I have what I need to do to protect myself? Do I feel comfortable leaving my house right now? So I'm a fearful person. Knowing that, I need to find a reason to step outside. I need to stay motivated, you know? So what motivates you? Figuring out what that fear is and why you're fearful of something, don't run from it. Face it. Face those demons and walk towards it. Step to it, talk to it, discuss things, and then move past it. And that's what you need to do. So that's what I try to use it as a way to fuel me versus guide me. Because if I'm doing things out of fear, I'm not going to actually embrace what I'm good at. I'm not going to embrace those successes. So prioritizing self-care and self-reflection, that is all I do. I'm always journaling. So I don't write personally. I'm not a writer. You're a podcaster. So we have our passions and the things that we want to build on. So I write. I journal every day just to reflect on the things that have happened, things that I want to happen, the bad things that are going on in my brain that don't actually hold a place in the real plane. Sometimes we just need to process. So that's why I use writing to process, to figure out what my next steps are. I put this imagery up here because I think it's important to see what our basic needs are, like food, shelter, protection. You need love and support. You need to build your self-esteem, build that. All the survival things that you need is really important so that you can be your best self. But at the same time, we're trying to make money. We're trying to win out here. We're trying to succeed. We're trying to build for our communities. So I think it's important to see the balance, you know, what that looks like. When you're your best self, your community can improve as well. The next question I would ask myself, and I try to ask this every day because it's hard to see, what kind of impact do I want to have in the world? You know, why am I doing all the work that I'm doing? I work with kids now, and they're middle schoolers, and they're asking all the big questions. This past week, we had that issue with the Delaware suspect coming into Philadelphia. I had a bus full of kids crying, worried, scared. They're asking me questions, are we safe? Are we safe? And I'm like, girl, you know, I'm the one that you're going to be safe with. Because like you were saying, you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared, right? You have to be prepared for everything that comes your way. So in that moment, I was like, thank God I'm crazy and I'm anal and I know I have all these babies and the permission slips, and I had everything I needed to protect them, to make sure that they were okay and to make sure that I was okay. So I think planned happenstance, if you get anything from me today, please write this down. Planned happenstance is something that I truly believe in. Creating opportunities for yourself to succeed is such a hard thing to build, a hard skill to build, but it's important for us to know how to do that because opportunities are not necessarily going to be given to us. As women of color, as people in the workforce, as young people in the workforce, it's not necessarily going to be given to us, so we have to create those doorways of opportunities. And being a catalyst of change. Knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you need, and what you want, now you know, what can I do for you? How can I provide something better for my community? And where do I want to make actual change? So leading into just keep learning and growing. I think for me, it's always been a journey growing up in the Caribbean for like 5 years and then being shot over here to the US. It's a culture shock. It's a switch of priorities. In the Caribbean, it's very collectivism. You are fighting for your family. You're gonna take care. I'm gonna take care of my grandma when she gets old enough and nobody wants her. I'm gonna take her in because that's what I've been taught to do and that's what I want to do. But here, as an individual society, you're taught to look out for yourself. But that, I feel like it should be both. You look out for yourself so that you can be better for the community, you know? So knowing who your allies are, whether that's a friend, family member, a co-worker, a peer, supervisor, a mentor, know who those people are. Because those are the people that are going to really pick you up when you're down on the ground, underneath the rug, you don't know where to find the rest of the planet. Those are the people you need to turn to, who's going to lift you back up. And building your competencies, knowing that you are not perfect, and I am always building and always learning, and welcoming those challenges versus being scared and running away from them. So if you want something and you're thinking, oh my God, I don't know how I can get this, figure it out. Take the steps needed and give yourself time, because you're gonna need that time to grow. You're gonna need that time to change, to fail, and pick yourself back up. When I went for the holidays to see my dad, he was making a joke because I would always, literally, as a preteen, I was always tripping, falling down. I was always falling down. Literally, I didn't know what my legs were for. So for me, now looking back, I'm like, damn, I did fall a lot, didn't I? Well, I learned how to fall like a professional now. So I'm ready for that fall because I know after I'm done, I'm like, whoa, I guess I'm ready for the next step. So be ready for that failure and embrace it. Don't see it as a deterrent for what your success will look like. That is something, that's a stepping stone, like you were saying. Knowing where your privilege and your power resides, I think, for me personally as a black woman, a young person in the workplace, I don't necessarily feel like I have a lot of power. I don't feel like I have a lot of privilege. But I know I do, and I know where it is. Because I have so much knowledge about diversity, because I know about this community, that's a privilege in and of itself. I can talk to the kids in a more candid, transparent way and say, hey, I know that you're not feeling so super happy about your hair right now because I struggle with my hair. You know, I know what that struggle is. You want straight, you want non-curls, you don't want any of this that is said to be ugly, that is said to be less than, but I know you're beautiful, and we're gonna talk about why. You know, we're gonna talk about what you need to look at in the mirror to see that you're beautiful. So knowing where your power is so important. And I think, what was it, this Monday, we had one of our leadership team made a joke about suicide. Me personally, it was a football-related joke. If it was in a bar on a dark night and we were having laughs and drinks, it was an appropriate joke. In a workplace, in a staff meeting of about 80 people, it's not an appropriate joke. And for me personally, suicide is so close to my heart. I had to deal with that as a kid growing up, suicidal ideation. I worked with kids in depression, anxiety, trauma. So I had to say inappropriate, not for this workplace, not when I'm sitting right in front of you, not today. And then after that meeting, I followed up with that. I was like, well, I guess we're doing really dark jokes for 2019. And then he sent out a prompt email to the whole staff apologizing. Because I'm gonna call you out. Whether you're my supervisor, you're my subordinate, you're my peer, I don't care who you are, how much you make. You're gonna respect me and we're gonna challenge each other to be better. I'm not gonna sit here and you think this is a joke, because we deal with this on a different way. We deal with this in our homes, in our families, so I think it's important for us to teach a little bit, you know, and challenge people to be better for themselves. So researching everything, though, by the change makers in your field of interest. If there's somebody that you really want to look up, somebody that you aspire to be like, somebody that's your mentor, know what they're reading, know what they're looking at, how they educated themselves. Get informed, because that's going to be your best ticket to success, is being informed. That's why they try to steal education from us in an urban area. They downplay our education. So that's part of the reason I work with kids, is because I want to do some education reform, especially in urban areas. I'm looking into starting a residency if I get in, I hope, you know, so that I can look at policy changes, you know where the law is actually in our favor and where it's not, and how we can change that for the future moving forward. So the next slide, I just put a couple things on there that I've always kind of suggested to other people: referrals, transactional analysis. So most of this is like psychology-based stuff, therapy that you can look into. The terms and concepts is what I want to share with you. So narrative therapy, talking through your traumas, knowing what that looks like, having tools to actually do that. The development theory, that's a career theory, knowing that when we're little, we only see what our parents do. We only see what our family does, so we can only aspire that far. But getting outside of that little bubble, you can see everything. You can see that there's somebody who's the first fire chief. Well, you never had one before. This young lady over here, and she's due. So you can see that aspire to greatness. And then self-actualizing, just being your most authentic self, making sure what you say, what you do aligns, and you're showing that to the world. So some of this stuff, I just love Miss Nina Simone, Lauryn Hill. Those are the things, those are the people that have been like, when I'm down and out, I can listen to those folks, and it picks me back up, brings me back into, you know, my motivated state. Yeah, that's it.